Welcome to the Resume Storyteller, bringing you interviews with industry experts, regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Guys, I have with me STEM resume writer Kate Williamson. I have been a huge fan of her for years. She's a former chemist and product development engineer who today is the owner of Scientech Resumes, a career consulting and marketing firm that works exclusively with science, technology, engineering, and math professionals around the world. Her experiences working in the US and in the Netherlands gave her a unique appreciation for the challenges of finding a job both here in the US and abroad. And today, STEM professionals seek her out thanks to her industry background, her master's degree in applied chemistry, and her technical writing skills, all of which lend themselves really well to working and conversing with technical professionals. So Kate, thank you so much for joining us. We've known each other for a long time, so I'm just so happy to be able to talk shop with you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Virginia. I know we've been trying to schedule this for some time, and I'm glad that we could make this work.
I know. Well, beginning of 2022 is probably a really good time to kick off the new year then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me what prompted you to pivot from chemical engineering to what you're doing now?
So it's a bit of a longish story that can really be distilled down into 3 words: extreme job dissatisfaction.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So I started my career working in an R&D applications lab in the Portland area, and I loved that job. I got to do all sorts of really cool things, working with specialty chemicals, like adhesive tapes, industry sealants. I even worked on a paint project once. That was pretty fun. And so I actually probably would have stayed in that environment had I not had the opportunity to go abroad to the Netherlands. And that was a job that looked really great on paper, but just ended up being, really disappointing in the sense that I didn't get to do a lot of R&D and product development, which is what I was sold on. So basically, the combination of moving to a different country, trying to adjust to a different culture, language, and then adjust to this new position that wasn't really that fulfilling for me in terms of where I wanted to be professionally, really led to a lot of burnout. And I'm oversimplifying a lot of what happened in this time. But for the sake of this conversation, I basically became overworked. I was very stressed, exhausted from the position.
So many can relate to that right now, especially. It's launching so many career pivots. So I'm grateful that you share that with me.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of other things I could go into just on this example in particular. But basically, I got to a point where I was just literally hating my job, like coming home Fridays exhausted, sleeping through the weekend. And by the time Sunday afternoon would roll around, I could start to panic and feel anxious, just knowing that the next day I was going to have to start it all over. Yeah. Now, during that time, I was looking for basically all ways I could to find some sort of engagement and fulfillment outside of work. And one of those came in the form of freelance writing. And I found that while I was looking for freelance writing jobs, that resume writing projects were pretty ubiquitous because, I mean, I don't know, let's face it, it's not a sexy type of writing.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, for a few years, I did a lot of subcontracting work, including working for some of those dreaded resume mills that we always warn our clients to avoid. Just on that note, I only lasted about 2 months at the one that I stayed at before moving on to some greener pastures.
Yeah.
And some of those experiences, I got to work with really established resume writers like Jessica Hernandez from Great Resume.
I did too. That's how I started.
That's right. Yeah, I just remember that now. Just on that note, I learned a lot from her, and I worked
100%.
There.
Yeah,
for about 2 years or so, and then basically through those experiences, I really found a lot of fulfillment just being able to help somebody on a personal level, like just solve a challenging problem, like, I don't know, marketing themselves for careers that they love in STEM fields. And then just, I'll close out on that note that there's very few resume writers who specialize in, working with STEM professionals. So
right.
I feel that I add a lot of value with I've always been a pretty strong technical writer. I had to do it quite a bit in my previous R&D and engineering jobs, but that combined with my background in working in industry and just having a pretty broad understanding and curiosity in various science and engineering and technical professions make me I think a really good partner to STEM clients. And I've been doing it for the last 5 years. Yeah.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And I can't think of one person who graduates from college or graduates from high school and says, I want to be a resume writer. Usually we come about it in a roundabout way, but what a perfect blend of your talents.
Thank you.
And I appreciate how you really explored other ways outside of your role to find satisfaction and then stumbled upon the career that way.
Oh, I had to. Otherwise, I was just going to, I was hating life, basically.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
so,
I know. Yeah. And as I said, I know a lot of people can relate to that. Are you seeing a couple of common challenges facing STEM professionals who are dissatisfied and looking to test the job search waters or make a career change today?
I've seen a couple people looking for remote work. Now, I know with technical professions like lab jobs, a lot of those have to be done on site. But I've worked with a couple of people who have, let's say, worked in medical research labs, and they want to go on and work in a medical writing capacity. Like those are some roles that they can transition to where they do get to have more of that flexibility working on a remote basis. I mean, I would say that STEM clients are probably plagued by most of the same job search issues as non-STEM clients. But that being said, most of them, STEM clients have the added challenge of needing to position and communicate how their technical skills and achievements connect to the greater company, department, or team goal, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're a lot of times you're writing for a non-technical audience, right? When you're writing these.
I would say it's like you're really writing for 3 different people. So we talk about applicant tracking systems. Then you usually have your frontline recruiter, HR professional, but a lot of times the hiring decision might come down to a technical person, such as like an R&D manager or something like that. So you really do have to write for your technical, non-technical, and then of course your online audience.
Right. And then that is an added complexity to someone who is targeting as a non-technical role. Are there any common job search issues that have caught your STEM clients off guard? Or do you think those are sort of similar to what other job seekers also face?
I would say they're mostly similar. I mean, most people tend to underestimate how long the job search process takes. I see tendencies to, people underestimating or oversimplifying their achievements. So, you and I both do free conversations, 20-minute discovery sessions with people before we work with them. And a lot of times I look at their resume and I'm like, I could see a lot of great things you've done here at value you offer to these companies, and it's not being communicated.
Yeah. It's buried, or it's doesn't give enough context. They boil it down and it loses a lot of its value.
Yeah. And I'll just give like an example that one of my largest client bases are PhD holders across diverse science and engineering disciplines who want to leave academia and transition to industry. So oftentimes, academic CVs tend to be really detailed, include a lot of scientific and technical jargon, and it's usually narrowly focused in a specific research area. So a lot of the times with those clients, it comes down to making a shift in mindset because, those technical capabilities and achievements need to be balanced with transferable and adaptive qualities to show that they have those skills that govern human interaction, especially in an industry setting, which tends to be more collaborative. So,
right. You're right. And the academic CV is one where you throw in everything in the kitchen sink in a way that you don't necessarily with an industry resume. It's more of a high level marketing brochure. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I would say just on that note, many people tend to be surprised when I tell them that I think it's over 80% of new hires are typically based on whether or not they possess the soft and transferable skills that govern human interaction. Because it's one thing to have the technical foundation, which is important to perform the job that they need you to do. But again, if you aren't coachable or you're not motivated or things like that, those are a lot harder to teach than learning how to use a new laboratory instrument.
80% of the candidates, their soft skills are what lead to their hiring versus the technical skills.
I saw there was a study that came out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to go look for it. I think I've seen it anywhere from like 80 to 85% of new hires are usually based on whether or not they possess the soft and transferable skills. So they might have somebody with a similar technical background, but if they think that one person is going to be easier to work with or fit better within the team than somebody else who might know every technical skill under the sun, but is not very collaborative, they're going to be more, they're going to want to hire that other person.
No, that makes such sense. And it's what I have also seen, I'm curious to see if you've seen this as well, is where people might recognize that soft skills are important. So they'll write terms like under their skills section, they'll write, cross-function, they'll write soft skills in their skills section versus implying it through their achievements.
Oh, like actually putting the word soft skills.
My soft skill list. Yeah, here's what I'm great at. Which people don't search for those terms. It's not a good idea to put those skills in there. You need to imply those skills through by explaining your bullets and showing how you use soft skills. Your hard skills and soft skills work to achieve X, Y, or Z.
Well, and telling stories too. That's another thing and you probably see this in your client base as well, but a lot of people underestimate the importance of LinkedIn in driving the job search process. So most people, I think, know that they need one, but the space isn't effectively used to be able to tell stories that really go beyond the resume, share more details about who they are, as a person versus you got your resume, which is more of a just the facts approach.
That's exactly right. Yep. No, 100%. You're right. It's a conversational, it's a place for someone to hear your voice and feel like they've met you.
Yeah. Much more casual, humanizing medium than there's only so much we can convey on a resume in terms of the human factor, I think.
That's right. Right. Well, I've been writing LinkedIn for a million years now, and it was such a refreshing change when it started becoming more conversational, because you used to get, as long as you literally did a cut and paste of the resume, and this is years ago, that worked great. And you had an advantage just by being on LinkedIn, but those days are long gone. Nice to have a place that's more conversational. So what is the best piece of advice that you can give to a STEM professional that is looking to begin their job hunt?
So I guess there's three things that come to mind. When it comes to starting the job hunt, I think that getting clear on your target industry, including like the types of challenges and opportunities you see in the field, is going to be really important. Not only does that show that you're interested in the field, but that also does come across to an interviewer when you're interviewing for a position at one of the employers you're interested in. And then on the side of employers, I noticed that a lot of people tend to focus on like very well-known and established companies, which, I mean, those have the highest level of competition, and the chances of landing a position there can be pretty low because a lot of people focus there. Where I would say, look at both your large players as well as your smaller and medium-sized companies as part of your overall job search strategy when putting together a list of employers that you want to work for or people that you would accept a job offer from. And then the third thing
that includes sort of highly competitive, small to mid-size that are maybe a little bit less competitive.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the third thing I would say is just to get organized. And I've been guilty of this. Like when I was searching for jobs, just being able to keep track of the companies and positions you've applied for. And this can be done as easily as just using an Excel spreadsheet with some of the basic info, company, job title, maybe even put the salary, wage if that's posted. If you've got recruiter, hiring manager, name and contact details, date you applied, et cetera. So that's just a really good way to keep yourself organized because I don't know about you, but I remember years ago being embarrassed when I would apply for positions and then get contacted for an interview much later and forget I applied. And then it was kind of an awkward.
Amazing how quickly you forget. You don't think you will, but the names and the dates and the companies start to blend together if you don't. And you're right. It is as easy as a spreadsheet and you keep it on your phone.
Yes.
I like that. And I love the idea of having diversity in your target list. It sort of reminds me of when you're applying to college and they say have 2 stretch schools, 2 safeties, and then, a couple in the middle.
And I actually got that advice from this great book I read just last year. It's called The 2-Hour Job Search. It's by Steve Dalton.
Is he at Duke?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The School of Business. And I actually, it was kind of great to read that book because I took a lot of those tips into my job search coaching and kind of expanded on them, especially that piece. He talks about looking at your big, medium, and small players when putting together a list of target companies. So
very smart.
Yeah.
And what about, how is that advice different than one you might share with the STEM person who comes to you after they've started job hunting? Because I get a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I've been looking for a job for 9 months and it's not going well. Fix my resume. That's, I get a lot of that. What advice do you have to help people regroup?
So a lot of those conversations will focus on the types of strategies, job search strategies that they're using. So sometimes from those conversations, a lot of times someone who's been engaging in a job search for a while, hasn't had much results, it could be for a number of reasons. They might be approaching the job search blind. So, sending out as many resumes as possible, hoping to get a hit. And we know that approach can feel productive, but again, people forget that the job search process is so time consuming. Oftentimes they're positioned for the role that they have instead of the one that they want. That's probably the biggest challenge I see across most people, from your new graduates up to your C-suite types. It's a big challenge there. So, and then I think sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And then the last thing I would say is that on the LinkedIn side, which I kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of people, might focus on the online application process versus actually building connections, following their target companies. So I guess to sum up, it kind of comes down to an unorganized job search process, being positioned for the role they have instead of the one they want, and focusing on unproductive strategies like online job postings versus building connections.
And what you said earlier about being clear on your target, that informs everything, right? It informs the companies that you're targeting, how you position yourself, who you're reaching out to, how your job search hunt looks altogether.
Oh yeah. I mean, you've probably worked with somebody who, they're just like, oh, I don't really care. I want to get a job. And it's like, well, that's going to be really hard for us to market you effectively then.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So what about that person who says, I want to leave academia, but I'm open to anything. I can do all these things. How do you help them, or what are your thoughts on guiding them through how to target and what they should do when they could do a bunch of different things as a part of their next move?
Yeah. So I would encourage them to try to think of, decide which path is most interesting to them. Now, sometimes if it's a technical field, they might have knowledge and skills that overlap in a variety of different areas with pretty minimal change. So sometimes working together, we can get away with just doing a master resume that's pretty encompassing, but maybe needs some changes depending if they're applying for, I don't know, maybe a role in microbiology versus something that's a little bit different.
A master resume that's tweakable.
Yeah. And then like with LinkedIn too, with a resume, it's a bit easier in the sense that you can have more than one resume. Whereas like with LinkedIn, it's a little bit harder because you can only have one LinkedIn profile. So I usually will try to encourage them to focus on which path they're most interested in and focus more of the content towards that.
Yeah, that's what I do too. But you're right. There are times when some of the skills can overlap, and you can definitely speak to that in your LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I like that. So this is sort of a snarky question, but I'm always curious to hear it. Are there common avoidable, or is there one common avoidable mistake that drives you most nuts when it comes to job hunting in the STEM world?
I don't know that this is necessarily unique to the STEM world, but I guess one of the things that bothers me is just simply when people oversimplify or downplay their achievements. Like, and it bothers me in the sense that like I might look at their resume, and just in that time I see like, wow, they've really done a lot of cool stuff, and they, it's not being communicated in a way that resonates with their target employers. And then I feel sad that they're missing out on opportunities that they could be a really good fit for, and that as a result, they're not having much success in their search. Yeah,
it's funny because there are certain, and I know I've certain industries, like certain sales roles, where the reverse happens. They've overplayed it, and so then and that has a different vibe. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the times people are trying to walk that line, like between sounding overly confident or arrogant. And in my experience, most people tend to go on the downplay side of things versus the overplaying their achievements, but that's just my experience.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. And again, it boils down to understanding the impact of what you have. I think the impact of what your work has led to, and speaking to it from that angle.
Yeah. One of the ways I always I'll work with some people who might be pretty modest and feel a little bit uncomfortable when they see the new resume. And it's like, well, are those things that we've written about you true though? And if they say yes, it's like, well, then we're not, we're not being arrogant. We're not being, overly braggadocious, or however you want to call it. Like this is true now.
Is it true? Can you speak to it? Do you have examples? Then it's facts. Not, no, 100%. So I'm curious to hear from you about discrimination when it comes to hiring practices. It's certainly something that comes up outside of STEM professions. What are your thoughts on the topic as it relates to ageism, sexism, racism, all of that, as it relates to STEM careers, and how do you help your clients to sort of navigate that landscape?
Sure. So one of the challenges that you hear about a lot is the lack of diversity in STEM fields. And there's a myriad of statistics that show that minorities, African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanics, and people with disabilities are grossly underrepresented in STEM compared with their representation in the general population.
Is that also with female versus male, men and women?
Yeah. And I'm actually going to get to that in a moment, because that's something I can speak to from a personal perspective. Okay. Yeah. So on that diversity note, women are still also vastly underrepresented in STEM fields. And there's been some improvements there compared to like back in the 70s, where I think it was like less than 8%, whereas now I think we're sitting a little bit more around like 27%. So getting a little bit better.
Direction, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember personally for me, I remember in college and grad school being one of only 2 or 3 women in my classes.
Wow.
Yes. And that was especially more common as you got to the more advanced science and math courses. And even in my last industry job, I would occasionally travel to a client site, usually as a technical resource with one of my colleagues in the sales department. And all of the people in the sales department were all men. But I remember a few times people thinking at first glance, when they would come to greet us and we'd walk into meetings, they would think that I was the salesperson and my male colleague was the product development engineer. So that happened on a couple of occasions.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say just in addition to the diversity aspect, there's 3 big challenges that women in particular face. Confidence is a big one. And I think that's especially true in terms of job search behaviors. So, you and I both know when it comes to applying for jobs that women are less likely to apply for a position.
Men will
especially
apply for, they have so much more confidence in terms of applying for roles for which they meet less of the criteria that women do.
Yes. And that seems to, from what I've observed, be more prevalent, especially as you get to the more senior level positions. So if women don't meet 100% of the requirements versus men who are more likely to apply for that same position if they made at least 60. So,
right.
So, and then I know for me personally, I struggled a lot for a while with that fear of being wrong. So that prevents you from speaking up in class, meetings, or just even starting on a new technical project, because there was this feeling that I needed to know everything about a particular topic. That was just me personally. And I think confidence is something that can be worked on gradually. And that actually brings me to the second challenge. A big part of that is having the support and appreciation from the team. So the second thing I'd mention is that lack of mentorship. So a lot of women in STEM careers, especially clients I've worked with, have told me that they don't feel like they have a lot of mentors available to ask questions, learn more about a particular career path, or just have someone to ask for guidance when they feel lost. So that's another one there. And I know for me in my very first job, I felt incredibly lucky that the first lab I worked in was mostly female employees. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, that impacts career advancement, certainly.
Oh, it does. And just even working there, I felt like I had a lot of support and people to look up to. And I think I mentioned earlier, if I hadn't decided to go live and work abroad, I would probably still be working in that organization. I might not even be doing what I'm doing now.
Wow. Is that wild?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. Some of my clients are first generation college students. So they don't have family in their industry, or they might not know anybody in the types of roles they want to pursue. And then this might sound like a bit of a cliche, but that representation does matter and is very critical for, that professional identity formation.
I never even, the whole mentorship piece, that's something that's honestly I don't know that anyone's ever brought that up. But it absolutely makes sense. If there's a lack of diversity, it does make those connections harder. And it impacts, like you said, it hugely impacts career advancement.
Yes.
Which can lead to dissatisfaction, and it's a vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm. And then, the salary portion, that's the third thing I'll mention in terms of challenges women face. And that's not just exclusive to STEM. But, women have historically been paid less than men in a lot of industries. So, we're lucky to live in the age of the internet where you can find a lot of information about market salary ranges. Right. And I'll just end that a great book I read on salary negotiation a few years ago is called Women Don't Ask: The High Cost of Avoiding Negotiation and Positive Strategies for Change. It's by Linda Babcock and Sarah Leshever. I hope I didn't butcher her name, but it's an incredibly...
Linda Babcock. I'm looking that up. What was the other author?
Yes. So Linda Babcock and Sarah Leshever.
Okay.
It's just an incredibly well-researched book on the different ways in which men and women approach the negotiation process. And I know I focused a lot on challenges for women here, but all of the advice given in this book could apply to men as well.
Absolutely. And people in minority situations, whether there's disabilities or ethnicity. But that, I'm sure that the salary piece is also tied to the confidence and the lack of support and appreciation, because it impacts how you speak to others and the connections you made so that you feel comfortable having those discussions. It's a vicious cycle.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Confidence, lack of mentorship, and understanding salary. Big three.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So someone comes to you and says, I'm going to get ready to start jobs hunting. What are a couple of tools that I absolutely need to make a change or get into STEM? What do you feel like those tools are that are key?
So I've thought about this quite a bit over the years, and honestly, the tool that comes to mind that's most valuable is an intangible one, and it's curiosity. I've found that my most successful clients, regardless of their career stage, are the most curious ones. So they're going to be the ones that engage in the job search process. And by that, I mean, they stay open-minded about the different career possibilities and really have genuine interest in researching and connecting with people in their field, looking at different industries. And I would say that it has a lot of curiosity, that is, has a lot of benefits both in and outside of the job search process. So in particular, it makes your mind active instead of passive. So again, that opens you up to those new ideas, possibilities, and excitement. And from a job search context, being curious is going to make it easier to learn new things and unlearn ineffective job search habits as well. For example,
like that learning agility, right?
Yeah. Like, the time and effort needed to plan your job search, or, even I've worked with some people who are very limited in terms of the types of roles they want to target, or just, certain companies, and using certain strategies, like only using online applications, for example, instead of diversifying to ones that have a higher ROI, like networking and things of that nature.
So they're more adaptable, they're more agile in their learning, and their minds are active, like you said, versus passive.
Yes. And the point you brought up on adaptability brings me to the last thing I was going to say on the topic of curiosity, is that my curious clients tend to bounce back much more quickly after something like a job loss or a setback. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think a lot of it just has to do with just, again, being open-minded to the possibilities of what else is out there. I remember when COVID first hit, there was one client I was working with at the time. And when a lot of people got laid off in the beginning, she was one of those people. And, she came back to me and was like, hey, this happened. Like, what can we do here? And she had actually been in the process of trying to explore new positions, just kind of in her industry, but a little bit different than what she was doing. And she, just the way that she took that setback, being laid off as one of 1,000 people, it was really kind of inspiring in terms of like, oh, you know what, I actually see this as a bit of, I was planning to go on to something else anyway. So now I see this as a bit of the kick in the butt I needed to make that happen. So I don't know if that necessarily answers the question. It's just I think a lot of it is a bit of a shift in mindset.
It's a mindset change, right?
Yes.
To embrace curiosity. Mindset. Love that.
Yeah. And then even then, curious people, more promoted tend to be promoted more quickly because they ask a lot of questions. They take the time to reflect on skills and knowledge that they've developed through different experiences and how those experiences can support them in future endeavors.
Well, they ask questions and they do something with the information because they are more agile and adaptive.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, very good. So I know that you have a busy caseload and you do a lot of volunteer work. Tell me what is next for you in 2022.
Oh my goodness. So right now, one of my big projects has been upping my content development game. So I'm in the process of launching a line of do-it-yourself materials. So that's including things like ebooks, worksheets, and just other resources that are meant to help STEM professionals beyond the resume writing process. That was something I wanted to do back in like 2020, 2021, but with the pandemic, things got super busy.
Yeah.
Just didn't happen.
Well, no, of course. Yeah. With many other people, those plans got sidetracked. So if people want to learn more and follow you, and when these DIY materials are ready, the places I've listed in terms of learning more about you. I've got your email, kate@scientechresumes.com, your website, scientechresumes.com, and your LinkedIn. Are those the best places for people to follow you?
Those are all great. Yeah, they can also follow me on Instagram at Scientech Resumes, or I do have a Twitter account, Scientech HQ, where people can interact with me as well. Yeah.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. This was really enlightening.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Good. No, great information for STEM folks, but also people. I think a lot of this advice applies outside of STEM. So super helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal. Adding value to people's lives.
Thank you. You take care.
You too. Thank you.
You've been listening to The Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's online skim hiring and decision makers, please visit www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.